This is the Inner Peacemaker Parent Podcast. Cassandra Kimball here with an episode for busy giving parents to learn another Christ-centered self-help tool. This is episode 18, How and When to Lovingly Say No. I recently was asked if I'd be willing to volunteer to serve in the church in my area as a ward missionary. I've never officially had this calling before, and I'm feeling really excited. It's like this internal fire that feels lit inside, and I'm ready to go. So during my first um, meeting, or they call it a missionary huddle, it's just after church. Um, it's like with the other volunteers that are doing it too, and with the sister missionaries. During that meeting, there was a set time when the sister missionaries were planning for the week of like who can come along with them to visit specific people. So when they got to planning this one specific day, there were a lot of people in the group that said they couldn't make it that day. And so while it was silent in the room for a moment, right? It's like my first day being part of this group that's been working together for a while. It's like silent in the room. So I like glanced down at got my large spiral bound paper planner resting on my lap. And I looked at the day they were talking about, and I had penciled in a possible activity that my daughter was hoping to have a friend. She wanted to go to a little baseball field near the school that she's like, "Can you text that mom of my friend so we can maybe go together?" And anyway, so that was the plan. So I'd penciled it in. It wasn't in ink, so I knew that it was just a plan that we were thinking about. As I prepared to say no, though, to like the sister missionaries, I noticed that for just a moment, some really old thoughts from some really old patterns of my what I consider chronic people pleasing, but I've never been diagnosed or anything, but I just felt like I was an intense people pleaser. Um, Went through that stage of my life. Some of those thoughts and feelings tried to resurface. I could feel it. And I could tell that like in part of my new like this fire inside of me, enthusiasm for like this new church calling. I also felt um a tiny little level of pride starting to creep in of like wanting to appear really good on like my first day with this group, right? And so like a little bit of pride just kind of started creeping through that tried to mix into that pure enthusiasm that I had. A little bit of pride in there too. And I could tell my old ways of thinking tried to come up and just say yes, right? They need you there. That's when they need you. Say yes. Your daughter will forgive you and right. Um so as I struggled internally for just a moment, it was all really fast, but a phrase of counsel came to my mind when the bishop of my ward, he gave me a priesthood blessing and set me apart in my new calling. Um, I was counseled to make sure to put my family first. And that stood out to me. I've also been given that that advice in my pastoral blessing too. So again, it just like stood out to me. I'm like, I know that's counsel from a Heavenly Father who loves me and knows that I have that enthusiasm and want to go forward and help. And um, but yeah, so I was just here I was like quickly realizing the wisdom of this statement to me because I felt that fire in me. The sister missionaries were there and they needed help. And I have that desire too because I want to like pay it forward in a sense. When I was on my mission in Brazil years ago, there were members of the ward that helped me on my mission. And I remember like every lesson we had with a member, I just remember thinking as a missionary, I'm like, the lessons just always go better. And so I knew I wanted to pay that forward someday. So in a very genuine way, I feel that drive of helping, wanting to help pay forward. wanting to say yes. In the end, I did say no from a place of love for my daughter and for myself to take care of me too. And I want to take care of myself by sometimes saying no to certain things. Elder Uchtdorf has taught that, talking about like our families and making sure they're a priority. In one of his talks, he said, our second key relationship is with our families. Since no other success can compensate for failure here, we must place high priority on our families. We build deep and loving relationships by doing simple things together, like family dinner and family home evening, and by just having fun together. In family relationships, love is really spelled Time, time. Taking time for each other is the key for harmony at home. We talk with rather than about each other. End quote. Um, in her podcast, in Jody Moore's podcast called Better Than Happy, she shared some helpful insight and ideas. Um, and her episode is called How to Say No. It's number 63. And this was the first time that I heard someone kind of talk about this topic. So I looked up and re-listened to a couple of different episodes, but this is one that she kind of talked about this a little bit more. In it, she said, in part, let's not settle for a life that is less than authentic. When we say yes, when we want to say no, that's pretending. That's not being authentic. It doesn't feel good if you're trying to be an honest person, right? Um, so she gives an example of in the school, someone they asked if she'd be willing to like volunteer to come in and like do a craft for the kids. And so this is the part where she's like, I'd be happy to do that. But inside I think, no, don't make me. She's like, then I had to put on a smile and pretend I was happy to be there. And then the teacher would be so grateful and I'd smile and be dishonest again. I do think we should say yes to some hard things. I think there are many times when we should do that, but other times when a no is better. If the task you're agreeing to sounds hard, maybe not your favorite thing to do, but you can do it for a loving reason, that to me should be underlined, for a loving reason, then I think you should say yes. If you're going to say yes and your reason is based in fear, I want to challenge you to say no. And here's what I mean. Sometimes when we want to say no, we don't because we'll feel guilty because we feel we should do it, right? Sometimes we see that something needs to be done and I'll feel bad if I don't do it. That's a fear-based reason, right? Sometimes we're afraid that other people that they'll think if we say no or we're afraid they'll be offended, right? So you can even hear the word fear when we describe that, right? I think that is actually it's unfair to the other person. It's putting no faith in them to be mature and loving and respectful. And maybe they will be offended, but that's not about you, it's about them. So those fear-based reasons are not good reasons to say no. They will keep you stuck and feeling resentful and not operating from a place of integrity. Jody Moore goes on to say, what would be some loving reasons? If I can say, even though it's not my favorite thing, it's going to be hard, it makes me uncomfortable, I'm willing to do it though because I love the people I'm serving. Maybe I'm going to do it because I just really love them. And so I want to do this because how I believe it will help them or what it will do for them. And if for the most part, when I'm doing that task, I can feel that kind of love and feel good how I'm helping out, then I think that's a good reason to do it. And then when I'm done, I'm going to love myself for doing it. So I'm going to feel good, not bitter and angry and resentful if that were really my reason. So Jody Moore goes on to share an idea that perhaps if one of her ideas is if you do want to say yes to that person or like a group, but no to that specific thing. She gives like an example of like a Relief Society activity. She was in charge of asking different sisters if they would like run one of the stations of a Super Saturday activity. So that was like her example she was giving. She was in charge of asking women if, like, would you be willing to run one of the crafts at one of the tables or something like that? And there were some people that just flat out said no to her. And there were some people that said, no, I don't want to do that, but maybe I could like help clean up the activity, or maybe I could help set up instead of like running an entire booth, right? And so she just loved that. She loved that people were honest with her. So that's her, one of her ideas is, um, so if you really like love that person or group and you want to say yes, but just not to that specific thing, you could suggest something else that you could do, right? Offer something that you could do out of love, offer to do that instead. So, for example, in that missionary planning meeting, perhaps I could have said, I'm sorry I'm not able to go that night. My daughter asked if I'd take her to the park with a friend, but I'm looking forward to another time, maybe on Thursday or something like that, right? Because that would be true. So, um, Jody says, figure out what is true and say that. What is real is that it's about you. And that's one of our fears, right? Is that they'll think you're rejecting them. It's not about them, but it's not about them. It's about you not having a loving reason, right? You just have your own weaknesses. We all do. Um, so yeah, whether it's like you feel like you're going to be too frustrated, right? Or it just can't, there's just, let me just read this part right here because I think Jody words it really well. She says, it's not because you're too busy, because we can find time for whatever we feel is too important. What's real is that you may not be there in your heart yet because you're not perfect, and that's okay. Step one of progressing is owning the truth of it. Just own the truth of it. The more you say yes, the more people will ask you to do things, right? So are you ready for that? And if you feel resentful of that or of things that you're doing that people ask of you, in what way am I being like less than honest with others and myself? And that's what fuels resentment. So either way, right? We're just going to say no or do it, but only if your heart can get there. Okay, so I know that was a lot of quotes, but I just think Jody Moore does such a great job of explaining it. Um, and I was trying to think of additional examples of saying no. And this whole topic, it just made me think of the small group of young boys who were taken captive to Babylon, and they were selected to be trained for the service in King Nebuchadnezzar's household, right? We've got Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. So Daniel and his friends, they kept the Lord's laws by saying no to wine and certain foods that were offered from the king, right? And I love that it says that the Lord blessed them physically, mentally, and spiritually, and they excelled in wisdom above all other servants of the king. That's amazing, right? From saying no to something, they were blessed in so many other ways. I also thought of stories. I was just trying to think of like examples when Jesus says no. And I was like, well, I know he said no to Satan when Satan was tempting him. Jesus said no to throwing stones or rocks at a woman caught in adultery. He said no to the temple being defiled. So Jesus, too, he said no at times. And in addition to saying no to other adults at times, I too need to say a loving no with my children at times. For example, when my 8-year-old daughter doesn't want to end a fun activity like crafting or playing with her stuffed animals, when she is having fun doing something, to do something less fun to her, like going to bed is less fun, or to her, or taking a shower is less fun at this stage of her life, right? So I have learned to lovingly say no, even if she makes a sad face, or she starts pouting, or she makes grumpy noises, or a newer one to me is she's starting to stomp a little bit. This is a new thing that she's experimenting with, right? She's experimenting how to feel her emotions. Her cousins were over recently and they were all jumping on the trampoline and having so much fun. And I let my girls go a little bit past our bedtime routine. I'm pretty habitual about timing of stuff. So, but I let them jump a little bit longer than they usually will play. And then I like mentally prepared them, like it's time to do your ending scene. It's like giving them kind of a warning of like, hey, it's going to be ending soon. And then a few minutes later, I said, it's time to come inside, get ready for bed. And this sweet daughter, who has just a really hard time accepting it, asked if she could have a few more minutes, just a few more minutes, just a few more things, one more thing, right? Just, and even like the cousins were all joining in and they just wanted to play a little longer. And there's a part of me, right, that internal struggle of like, I want to be the fun mom and the fun aunt. And then this other part of me is like, I need to take care of my daughter too. I know they're having so much fun. And yeah, I know that I already let her stay up late a little bit later so I can just lovingly say, no, I'm so glad you're having so much fun. And it's time to come inside, right? And I can just do it and embrace that there's going to be some sad pouting and I can just handle that. I can practice that, right? I can practice just accepting there's going to be some big feelings for my kids. And it's a beautiful thing. It means that they were having so much fun in their life. That's a beautiful thing. Um, yeah, I'm so glad my daughter can be like so present and so happy in certain activities. So home is just a great place for her to practice feeling feelings and me to allow her to feel her feelings, right? Um, yeah, I just think that's such an important topic, and I hope it's been enjoyable for you. I know that you are an internal peacemaker that desires to give, and instead of getting out of balance with people pleasing, which is fear-based, right? Instead, and also like pride, right? It's based in pride too, pride and fear. Instead, you are seeking to be true with yourself and true with others. And you're striving to balance your time for your family. You can lovingly say either yes or no, or no, but perhaps in this other way I can. And this is how I would love to help you, right? So you can do it in such a loving way. No can actually be a really beautiful and loving way to communicate with another person. So best wishes saying no this week. Take care.